Okay, so for our first technique, Devin's going to be throwing a roundhouse punch. Now I'm going to show you, to try to somewhat future-proof this, I'm going to show you the version we're doing now, and I'm going to show you a version that I was teaching as sort of an alternate to this technique a few weeks back, which might eventually become the version of this technique that we teach. So, how do you know which version you should practice? Well, hopefully if you're referencing this video, you're familiar with the technique. If one version looks unfamiliar to you, it's probably not the version you should be working on. Okay, so like I say, he's throwing a roundhouse punch. Now, my initial defense is I'm going to step in with what we call a double hammer block. And what that means is this hand is performing an outward block, this hand's performing an inward block. The inward block is designed to strike and inflict injury into the biceps, but because of the nature of his punch, I don't want this to loop around. So we have our outward block here for insurance, okay? Again, so he steps in, I step in, I'm trying to cripple the arm. I'm not just hitting horizontal though, because I don't want to orbit him into a follow-up attack. I know this is coming. I don't want to accelerate it towards me any quicker than it's already going to be coming. So we're hitting at a slightly downward angle here, back fist, and then elbow. Now, I do want to point out one thing. A lot of times we do step-through punches. This technique is probably best done if he keeps this foot forward and he throws the roundhouse punch with his rear hand so that now his body is square to me and I can attack the solar plexus. So just doing this version in the air, why don't we do it together? We're going to step in, double hammer block, back fist, and then elbow. And so this kind of circles back around and collapses into our elbow to the solar plexus. Now I said that there's an alternate version that we're potentially looking at becoming the version that we teach. And who knows, by the time you're watching this, it might be the version we teach. And that is that as he's throwing his punch, and yes, again, it could be rear hand punch. As he's throwing his punch, I step in, I'm performing an outward block as insurance, but my main defensive strategy is to turn my offense, or turn my defense rather, into an offense. To beat action, meet action. So this becomes kind of secondary. This is what's designed to take the steam out of him. So I punch him and then elbow. And again, doing this in the air, we step, hit, and then elbow. And so now it kind of collapses and circles around this way because of the alignment of my strike. Okay, so there's your technique. Let's move on to the next one. Our next technique is also dealing with a roundhouse punch. I'm going to start in a neutral position. As he steps in, I'm going to step back. This is an outward shuto block. Simultaneously, my other hand is going to be rising up underneath like this so that we have a shuto chicken wrist block. And I'm going to clamp down on top, trapping his arm, back fist, side kick, and cross and cover. Let's change sides. Again, he throws his punch and I'm stepping back. Now notice the major block here is with this hand. This other hand's coming in just for assistance. We're going to trap, back fist, side kick, and cover out. Our next technique is going to be off a cross push, and we're going to be utilizing the revolving door principle. So as he pushes, I'm going to step in and rotate away rather than letting him push me and me getting knocked back. By rotating like a revolving door, I can actually move in, and off of that initial move, if we turn around, I think you'll see this better. This hand's going to hook up and this hand's going to come in and jam the arm. Now I'm going to check down, strike. I can do a palm that glances off the jaw. You could choose multiple targets for this. I'm going to hook around behind and knee, driving him back with that knee, and then we're going to finish with an elbow that just collapses in. Let's do this in the air. So we step in and we have this hand hooking underneath while the front hand is performing an inward block. Check down, palm, hook, knee, and elbow. The next technique is going to be a low uppercut. As he steps in, I'm going to step back, and we have our smothering block coming in. So we're coming down on top of his block. There's going to be a little frictional pull here as my arm circles back around. Now, at the same time I'm performing this block, this arm is traveling on its own path, its own circular path, on its way to strike the bridge of the nose, and then we're going to rake down. Now this hand, our initial blocking hand, is still on orbit, so that from our block we claw, and then this hand comes right back in with a punch. So let's do that in the air. We step back, we have our smothering block, we have our strike, heel palm claw, and then our punch. For our next technique, we're going to be dealing with another roundhouse punch, and we're going to be making use of the principle yet again to beat action, meet action. So as he attacks, I'm going to be meeting his attack with one of my own. And this time I'm going to be utilizing what we call an obscure palm, meaning it's coming in down below from an obscure zone rather than chambering it up here where he's going to be much more able to see it coming and to react more quickly. So as he steps in, this is insurance. This is our major defensive maneuver. From here, I'm going to circle around and I'm going to catch him with a thrust punch. Notice this position should look pretty familiar. It should look like a really important technique that you learned at your last belt. From here, I'm going to use some counter torque as I snap back away and catch him with a back fist. Let's turn this around. We'll do it from another angle. So he punches, I catch him with our palm, thrust punch, and back fist. We'll do it once in the air. Step in, palm, punch, and back fist. Let's look at our next front choke defense. Now, for this particular technique, we're not dealing with a front choke as much as we're dealing with an attempted front choke. So let's look at the technique and let's talk about some of what's going on here in terms of being able to effectively apply and practice this technique. So he's reaching in and I'm going to step back. Now this is the first thing. If you practice this with a partner, you have to commit to reaching in and grabbing your partner. You can't just stop your attack the second they start their defense. So he's reaching in, and now that's our defense. Now it might look like he's almost got the grab, and actually he does almost have the grab, but I've sealed his arms down. I've checked his arms down from the front choke position, and I've now trapped him. I'm grabbing with my thumb on the back of the hands, and my fingers are coming in and grabbing the thumb joint, right where the thumb connects to the palm. That gives us our leverage for our lock that we're going to perform, which is going to be a wrist lock defense, or a wrist lock technique. So he reaches, and I'm pinning. Now when I pin, he's going to try to pull free, and I twist, and now I'm going to pull and push and lock him down. A couple of options here. Maybe I do this so quick with so much momentum, I drive him right to his knees, and now I knee him in the face, and then I can kick, and I can just knock him back away. That's option one. Option two is from this position, I bring him down, and I knee him in the face, and then I just kick him in the groin, and I cross and cover. Okay, so why is this an attempted grab? Well, when I was younger, we used to do it actually off of a two-hand grab. But if he's got a strong hold, trying to grab and peel off his attack using this method, it's just not the most practical escape. If you go back and you look at the previous front choke defense that you learned at your last belt, that's a more practical method of disengaging his grab. There are other methods of disengaging his grab. But in the ideal phase, if I stop him before he gets a hold of me, like I said, well, we have a couple options. He might pull away, he might continue trying to force through, and then maybe I hook and I move into other techniques that you'll learn later on. So there are other options from there that you should explore as well. But like I said, this is best done off of an attempted grab. Let's do it in the air. We step back, I'm reaching overhead, I'm grabbing, my elbows are out, and they're out because this anchoring down helps give me leverage. It helps add angular momentum to the technique so that as I initiate that twisting action, I'm going to drop everything in and then push everything forward, knee kick, and if you want, you can land forward or cross and cover. Okay, one more time smoothly with less talking. Step back, lock, there's your kick, and then cover out. We're moving on to our next back choke defense. He's going to grab me from behind. I'm going to pin, and I'm going to step and rotate. Now I'm checking his arm, and I'm going to keep it pushed away as I come in and I catch him with a roundhouse elbow here. And now I'm going to check his arms, and then roundhouse elbow here. This is called twirling wings. We have a little bit of a figure 8 pattern happening there. Let's do this in the air, and I think it might be best if we actually turn around and start facing away from you. We're going to pin, I'm going to step back, and I'm going to rotate into position. This hand comes up as a check. It could be a lock, elbow, check, and elbow. Let's take a look at our next lapel grab now. This is a two-hand grab. I'm going to pin. First thing I want to make note of whenever you're doing a pinning action, make sure it's actually a pin. A lot of people in practice just kind of place their hand there and you're not really trapping anything. So I'm going to pin, I'm going to step in, and I'm going to catch him with a hammer strike here, and then I'm going to pull down. This is going to control his height. This hand's going to come back around into a roundhouse elbow and then an outward elbow. And the outward elbow could go to the sternum, could go to the face, depending on your opponent's height and their positioning. Really, any available target will do. So, let me fix my gi. We're going to pin, step, and essentially we're doing an inward block that we're expanding into a hammer strike. We're going to do that simultaneously. So we're pinning, stepping, and striking. Now some people will do an attack with the leg when they're performing this technique. We're just going to leave it as a step for now. As we step in and hit, this hand pulls down, roundhouse elbow, and outward elbow. One more time. I pin and step, hammer, pull down with a check, roundhouse elbow, and outward elbow. Let's look at our last technique for this belt. Here's the attack that we're dealing with. Somebody's coming in from behind to try to apply some sort of chokehold, whether it's a forearm choke, cutting off our airway, or a blood choke. Those are the general chokeholds that we're dealing with. And so our defense, as he comes in, is I'm going to step sideways because I want to negate his ability to get his arm around me. I'm going to grab, I'm turning my head at the same time, and I'm ducking my chin in to prevent him from applying his choke. As I fuse my arm down and tilt slightly forward. Elbow, hammer, and then elbow. That's going to be our follow-up. Okay. Now, with this arm, if my arm is out here in space and he's pulling against me, we have sort of an arm wrestling match going on. If instead I drop my arm down here, and you can try this with a bigger person, and you'll see that you have much greater leverage in this position. So when you grab, pull everything down, fuse your arm to your body, and then you can come in with your follow-up strikes. Okay, let's do this once in the air. So again, we're stepping sideways, I'm dropping my height, and I want to prevent them from getting me bent backwards, so we tilt just a little bit. We shift our center of gravity forward just a little. As we grab, pull that arm down, elbow, hammer, and elbow.